What's up, Wanna Coffee fam? It's Kai, and we are back, kicking off season 2, and things have slightly changed for us. We will have weekly contributions from strangers all over the world discussing various topics chosen by yours truly. And this is the first time these contributors have spoken to one another, so you are in for a real treat. Without further ado, here's Damien and Ethan with American Education.
All right, we're recording. I'll do a quick introduction on my end. Hello, I'm Ethan. I'm currently in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, here to talk with Damien here. Damien, have at it.
Hey, Ethan. Yes, I'm Damien. Coming in to you guys live from Austin, Texas, for a good conversation about the American education system.
Yeah. I guess I'll start and just be like, so I grew up in California, went to grade school and elementary school there, middle school, high school, undergrad, did grad here in New York. How about yourself?
Grew up in Chicago, went to undergrad at Purdue in Indiana, and then later on, after some work, did my MBA down in Miami.
All right. We were sort of just talking offhandedly before, and I was mentioning things like student loans and how they're my kids,
Right.
aside from all my other bills. But I mean, that's, I would say, probably the big thing right now, right? With Biden administration, everybody's clamoring for him to cancel student loans, or as much as he can, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they definitely want him to do that. And you, like myself, I have student loans as well. And I'm interested in that too, because on my end, I believe that it would have a very large benefit for the American populace. I think it almost would be a sort of a goodwill to the nation, after we've gone through so much with the coronavirus. I mean, most people that I know who did higher education carry some amount of student loan debt, and it would be very good to have it, disappear.
I mean, I'm as someone who's in debt for student loans, yeah. I mean, I certainly agree that like whatever they decide, like, will absolutely help, right? And I know
Yeah.
a lot of people, my own like friends who would like absolutely benefit from any kind of like student loan cancellation. I mean, the talk right now is minimum 10K. Everybody wants 50K, but Biden's like balking at the idea of 50K. And then his thing was, yeah, I'm hesitant to do 50K because like that's usually people who went to private school. And I kind of call bullshit on that, but you know.
I do. For me, I think that's a non-starter. I mean, who really cares for that? So, what are you telling me? Are you were not going to help people who are hurting, just so we don't help people who aren't hurting? Like it doesn't really make any sense. And if you look at the amount of money that it is compared to all the money that we've given out since the beginning of time, but especially during Corona, it's really not that much a lot, as far as I think it's $1.5 trillion in student loan debt for the entire country.
Yeah.
I mean, we were giving that out like candy just a few months ago.
Yeah, it's great you bring that up because I just find it utterly absurd that they're like, oh, it's too much money, it's too much money. We can't give handouts to these people. But they time and time again give like they help out banks and corporations and Wall Street when they fucking shoot the shit. Like they fucked up multiple times in the last 50 years, like breaking the economy, and the government pops in every single time to bail them out. Every single time they get bailed out.
Every time, man. Corporate welfare is okay. Regular welfare or helping anybody who may need just a little bit of assistance. Oh, we can't do that. But if you're already rich, hey,
we gotta make sure you stay rich, right? We gotta make sure you stay rich. God, man, yeah, it's just infuriating. Like the whole thing, like back to like the whole well, if you went to a private school, I don't want to help you out. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Because like he's making, if you, when you say something like that, you're sort of automatically making the assumption that you're a rich person who decided to go to a private school, when that's not always the case. There are a lot of people who in, like, say, underprivileged, underserved communities who go to these schools because of their names, right? Because of like the history of that these schools represent and what they mean to certain families, right? But that doesn't automatically mean they're able to afford it. A lot of times people can't, you know. uh
I think that Joe Biden is actually thinking, due to his age and just his history in politics and just being alive, he's actually sort of delayed in his progressive thinking, I believe, and that's what's really holding us up. I voted for him because I definitely believe the alternative was not good. But my original, when this whole thing started out 2.5 years ago, the primaries and stuff like that, I was definitely looking at candidates like Bernie Sanders and some of the other people out in the field, because they, from their rhetoric and some of the things that they've done in Congress and their other leadership in the states and things like that, it seemed like we were on the cusp of something more grand, something more large, right? And that's what the American education system needs, is somebody to do a bold act, right? And it
yeah.
seems like Joe Biden's not ready for that.
Yeah, I very much agree. I don't want to veer too much on the outside of the topic, but like you're totally right.
Yeah.
Much like with American education and the way we approach it, I'm with you. I believe that it requires a wholesale top to bottom change, not these small little increments that like help small percentages of the communicate of the population. That it needs to be overhauled, like top to bottom.
Yeah.
Teachers need to be paid more. They need more benefits. We need more teachers, but it kind of can't unless we pay them, and we can't pay them unless people like actually want to value them and make and pass legislation to open that up, which is never the case.
Yeah, make sure that they're paid, make it an attractive position. I hear about teachers, getting paid in growing up in Chicago and stuff, like the local teachers that I had in school, and it's just nothing. It's pennies on the dollar, and I don't know how they survive. And in fact, a lot of them in high school, like my cross country coach, because I ran cross country, he would teach, and then in the summer he would go to another state and teach people how to do like prepare kids for running at the college level and things like that. So he had to take on second and third jobs to survive. And how does that give him the freedom and flexibility to be his best self in the classroom?
Absolutely. I love that you brought it up. I did track in high school, so I'm right there with you. And what's sad is that example of your cross country teacher, that's the standard, that's the norm, that's not an exception, like an outlier. Like I know way too many teachers who have to do multiple jobs or like feed into their own personal funds in order to be able to supply normal everyday things for their students, paper, pencils, things like that. It's incredibly infuriating.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you, how do you feel about now, now that I'm 35 years old and I've done, K through 12, college, grad school, and things like that. And what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing now, with technology and just, just how people are, do you feel like a higher education degree is, worth the same thing it was even 10 years ago?
That's such a great question, because like I have pretty strong feeling. One, I'm 35 too, by the way. So I've like have pretty much the same amount of experience as you for sure.
Yeah.
And I have very strong feelings about like American education and how we go about it, and like if we're actually providing worth to our students, to getting the youth of this nation actually prepared to be proper adults and being able to like actually function, and be in a position where they can start with savings and building towards a future of like the quote American dream, house and family and white picket fence and all that stuff, car, savings.
Yeah. I mean, oh, continue.
No, yeah, I don't think our education system as it is right now does that in that sense, and that, I don't know if higher education. It's such a hard thing. I think higher education is important and it's worth it for its own merit, but the amount, the way, how much it costs compared to what people are actually getting out of it in terms of like getting jobs and getting practical experience, I don't think so.
Right. Because like if it was free, right? If everything was free, K through 16, right?
Yeah.
If it was free, then that's a whole different conversation that we're having, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
because you have to, yeah, because you have to pay these exorbitant fees. If you look at, a lot of people try to talk about the minimum wage, right? It's not going up. It's not, matching today's lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
Well, what has gone up is college tuition at the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of percentage rates for diminishing returns,
Yep.
I believe.
Yeah.
I noticed that. I started really noticing it when I was in grad school. I really enjoyed grad school with some of the teachers that I met and some of the classes. But the most important thing to me was the students that were in there together with me, right? Those relationships, those bonds. I mean, those are some of my closest people even to this day. And it's helped me even in business, like in just career-wise, knowing these people. But what I learned in the classroom, like what I actually picked up, I mean, gun to my head, I can't say that I got anything more than I would have had just living another year, living
Yeah, but
another 2 years.
catch 22 without that MBA, probably a lot of businesses won't even look at you, right? That's the thing.
Right. It's a
Like
dirty game.
without those three letters on your resume,
Right.
a lot of businesses, a lot of hiring managers won't even look at you. That's the catch 22. But then you have to get it. But like it's like you said, you may or may not actually learn what you need to learn, diminishing
Right.
returns, but you got to pay for it. You pay for it, right? And then you're
Yep.
out and you're hamstrung from day one because you got to pay off those bills, but you got to get a job to pay off those bills. But you can't get a job, unless you've at least gotten a floor, those
Right.
three letters, MBA, MFA, whatever it is, right?
Yes.
Um,
BA. Yeah.
the whole system is rigged in that way, modern as it is today, um, because of the
It's like
money.
yeah. It's like an inside joke. I mean, everybody agrees that you've got to get these letters on a piece of paper that you said, and to sort of trick employers to hire you, even though they know the trick. So it's really crazy. So
Yeah, we're a numbers game here in America, whether it be getting the job, getting the certificate or degree to get the job, but also we treat our students, our education, the way we teach kids as numbers. They're not people we need to teach anymore. And I think that's very much back to like we're a test heavy system where all of our
yeah.
education and our advancement is entirely dependent on letters and numbers, not
Right.
like actual substantive education, right? Like getting the A, getting the 100%, right? Getting the SAT, getting the AP scores.
Yeah. I mean,
But that's
I think
usually these aren't good indicators of people actually understanding educational subjects and being educated and being prepared to apply whatever it is they're learning to real life scenarios.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Basically, it is an antiquated system. And I think the way that people interact with technology now, the cell phones, internet, YouTube, it's really going to change, how people's brains are wired, maybe for the good and maybe for the bad. But we are going to have to recognize that people perform tasks in different ways, right? I mean, I look at YouTube to learn things, how to fix things around the house, how to, study IT stuff and study code and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's almost as good as the classroom. It might be better. The verdict is still out on that. And I'm wondering, where do you think it's going? Given everything that we've said, where do you think education is going? Do you think universities are going to find a way to really come back to the forefront and really show their worth, or Could we be headed to a point where people totally disregard university and maybe do trade schools and stuff?
It's hard for me to see that the latter, simply because so much money is invested and dependent on universities. And that's not just like students paying, that's like their namesakes, their histories, businesses, like for instance, Wall Street. Like there's a stereotype, right? Where if you didn't go to Harvard, if you didn't go to Yale business, they don't even look at you, right? So it's I think it's not even like a question of like whether they'll be relevant. It's because, oh, I'm gonna have to pause here. I'm getting a call for delivery. I'm gonna mute myself. I'm gonna tell Keith to cut here. I'll be right back, man. Damien, my apologies. Thank you for waiting.
No worries. No worries.
I'm gonna pick up the recording and the timer. Well, it was recording this whole time, but I'm gonna pick up the timer again. Yeah, it's try to pick up where I left off, where we left off. It's hard for me to say that going forward where education is headed, if universities are going to be completely obsolete. I think things have to change. And I think definitely this pandemic and the quarantine has made those institutions face it quicker than before. And I hope trade schools come back, you know, because those are very important.
Yeah, I think you kind of bring up a point. It might be a situation of they're just too big to fail, right? There's too much money, too many powerful people in these schools or using these schools to even enrich themselves in certain ways, that they're not gonna let it fail. Which is good and bad, because if we can get a system where it is affordable or free, then that's great. That's wonderful. But if not, they're gonna have to make some changes, because eventually the cost level will be so high that, you know, poor people won't be able to even attempt to go to the schools. But there will be some real smart poor people or middle class people that'll figure out how to get it done from smaller schools, from trade schools, or from YouTube, and really, you know, maybe eat at the standing even further of these universities.
I think you bring up a great point too. You know, we are, as a society worldwide, moving toward a very open and shared informational generation. Like a lot of stuff is on the internet that people can teach themselves from free resources all around. Like before, you had no choice but to go to these institutions, right? Because even though, yes, you had the library, those resources are limited and a bit more difficult to acquire. Nowadays, as long as you have any sort of device with an internet connection, you can more or less access educational tools, you know, maybe not necessarily like at the level of a university where sort of like that those resources and academic resources are sort of gated and held off and closed to general open access. But I think there might be a reckoning coming in the next, who knows, 10-20 years, really, where information becomes to the point where we're going to have to decide, like, are you really going to force people to pay in order to access information to that level? Because people can access themselves.
Access information that they literally have in their hand already. It's just, well, you know what, I'll have to, you know, in about 10-20 years, you know, my daughter will be going to college or be at that age, and we'll have to make that judgment call then. So
yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, speaking of your daughter being at the age now, what's your opinion on just education from, like, you know, 0 to K?
I kind of like we discussed previously, I think that, you know, the teachers need to be paid more so that they can focus on the work at hand, the task at hand. I actually have a friend that is an art teacher in Washington, D.C. area. And, you know, he always tells me he doesn't get paid enough to really be focusing on the students year round, right? He would love to do it because that's his passion. He'd love to work with them in the summer, but he's got to do other things that are higher paying to be able to participate in that. So, yeah, man, I don't know. It's a tough thing.
That's capitalism. We've just got money everywhere. in places, even in places that it really shouldn't, healthcare, education, etc.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I wish we could do, we have all the resources to do better, but I just, as a nation, unless we have consensus, it doesn't get done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we're about at the time mark.
Yeah.
Ethan, it was great speaking with you. I know we'll be talking again in the future about some interesting topics. We're doing a little round robin with all the hosts. So this was a good talk, man.
Yeah, Damon, I really appreciate this. This was great, and I really look forward to speaking with you again.
Yep. All right, man. Thanks.
You take care.
Yeah, you got to show me how to do the potato. How did you get that? Is that built in?
No, you just download like a virtual filter, like something like Snap Filter.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you just download whatever filters they have, like for instance, in this case, potato. But you can, download things like make yourself look like a carrot, make yourself look like you have cat ears, things like that.
Or the guy who looked like a cat. I don't know if you remember.
The lawyer cat. Yeah, that's exactly basically what happened with him. They were using his assistant's laptop, and she had done it, but they didn't realize she kept it on.
I feel like he did that on purpose, though. You can't tell. He did that. He got to go viral,
I just love that because like that's a guy who's at the very end of his ropes. Like he's at the end of a quarantine and a pandemic, and he's just like, I you know what? I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
I think he said something to assure you that I'm a human or something like that.
I love it. I love that he at the end he's like, yeah, I'm here in person. I'm not a cat.
Yeah.
But I love the judge. I love the judge because there's a moment of silence and the judge goes, I can see that.
Yeah, clearly. And if you were a talking cat, we have bigger problems than this court procedure.
Yeah. But here's the thing though. What kind of human has to go to the trouble of proving they're a human? There's the theory he's actually a cat pretending to be a human because he's like, what person has to like really prove they're a human? Nobody does.
Nobody.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm gonna let you go, man. Talk to you later.
Yeah. All right, I'll forward you the recording.
What can be said about American education, especially after that conversation? I suppose the word for me would be complex. Definitely room for improvement. Thanks a lot, guys. That's it for us, folks. Catch us next week for a brand new episode with brand new contributors. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Wanna Coffee Pod. That's Wanna Coffee Pod. I'm your host, Kai, and let's wanna coffee next week. Cheers. Oh my God, orange is not my new black.